Can we talk about evolution and revolution today?
Of course. In fact, I've been looking forward to it. The first thing to keep in mind is that freedom of religion was never intended to enable forces destructive to the founding principles. This goes for freedom of speech as well. Enabling forces destructive to our founding principles would be suicidal, and committing suicide can hardly be viewed as evolving to a higher plane. In a landmark Supreme Court case, the court's unanimous opinion was written by Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes, Jr. He gave a practical example of a limit to the right of free speech. He said that it did not grant a citizen the right to cry fire in a crowded theater. Similarly, our right to religious expression does not grant a citizen the right to open fire in a crowded theater, or for that matter, Fort Hood. As we talk today, keep in mind that the revolution that broke us away from England was in fact in response to the king's refusal to constrain his powers to those supported by Christian values. Our right to free speech was never intended to enable the broadcast of pornography, let alone to our youth. Our right to life was never intended to nullify capital punishment. Our right to the pursuit of happiness was never intended to enable the slavery of another. The pursuit of happiness is actually tied to the right to own private property, not to the support of anything that makes you feel good. Our constitutional rights and the limits placed upon them are spelled out in the Bible. If you don't believe me, you can go to the website, www.wallbuilders.com, and purchase a copy of the Founders Bible, and you can read it. Proper government is one of the reasons God gave us the Bible in the first place.
Well, even so, how can we evolve if we are chained to a constitution that God didn't write, and which is hundreds of years old?
That, citizen, is what the amendment process is for. See, the idea is not to cast these documents in concrete, but it is to cast them upon the bedrock of Christian morality. Many people believe that the governments go through a repeating cycle. Here's one typically referred to as the Tytler cycle. It asserts that we move through 8 social governmental phases, after which we repeat the cycle over and over forever. The phases begin with people in bondage. It says that they will move from bondage to spiritual faith, from spiritual faith to great courage, from courage to liberty, from liberty to abundance, from abundance to selfishness, selfishness to apathy, apathy to dependence, from dependence back into bondage again. Another such cycle was the basis of communism in the late Soviet Union. Karl Marx saw all societies moving from a primitive hunting and gathering society to slavery, then from slavery to feudalism, and from feudalism to capitalism, then from capitalism to socialism, and from socialism back to a primitive hunting and gathering society. Every society would cycle through these phases over and over forever, and Marx saw Russia as a feudal system ruled by a czar. He reasoned that rather than go through the capitalistic phase to get to socialism, it might be possible to bypass capitalism altogether with a revolution. Hence the choice between evolution and revolution. However, just like all evolutionary cycles are not the same, not all revolutions are the same. Note the enormous difference between our American Revolution and the Russian Communist Revolution. One was based on Christian values, and the other was based on atheism, a complete exclusion of God from the governmental process. However, these views of social, governmental evolution and revolution did not allow for divine intervention. Given divine intervention, any phase, cyclical or not, can be modified by God in response to prayer. He can have a people bypass a phase, extend a phase, terminate a phase, experience the modified version of a phase, so on ad infinitum. So the problems we face today are largely due to the failure of Christians through prayer and positive action to keep non-Christian values from taking root and flourishing in this country. The last few generations of Christian Americans have grown so selfish and apathetic in their abundance that they have forfeited sacred ground through inaction, and the fruit is bitter and hard to dispose of. Many of the problems we face are our own doing, or better yet, our own not doing.
Are you suggesting that we're nearing critical mass?
Well, hold that question until we meet again.